friends, Shay here. So today's video is a special project that I'm going to be working on over the next couple of months. So in this project, I am going to be reading all of the winners for the past 10 years of the Goodreads Choice Award in a particular category. The category that I will be reading is historical fiction. Now, historical fiction is something that I enjoy. I have not been reading it as much the last couple of years just because they tend to be fairly heavy. So that's why you haven't seen me reading as much. As I was going through the list of titles that I'm going to be reading for this project, I have already read two. So the two that I've read, I'll quickly mention. That is The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, which I did DNF at one point, but I did go back and read, and I did end up enjoying. I would give it a solid like 3.5. It's a little more intense, and it wasn't my story to tell necessarily. I can appreciate the story that it's telling, and I think it's a very important book that everybody should read, but it wasn't a new favorite for me. The other one that I've read is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I gave this 4 stars. It is a solid World War II historical fiction novel. I will not be rereading these two titles in this project just because I have 8 other books that I need to read in a relatively short amount of time considering the length of some of these books. So let's get into what I am going to need to read, and then I'll give you kind of my starting rank of where I think things will end up. We'll see by the end of this project how bad or wrong my list is. So we'll go from there. So let's start back clear in 2013. The 2013 winner was Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. I've not read anything by Kate Atkinson, but I know that this one is a pretty big seller at our bookstore, so I'm a little less worried about that one. The next one is a book that I have purposely been putting off for a very long time, and that is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I know it's one that's going to make me cry, which is why I've kept putting it off, but clearly this is the video where you're going to see me cry as I read it. That was the 2014 winner. 2015 was The Nightingale. 2016 was The Underground Railroad. 2017 was Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. I have not read any Lisa Wingate, so I don't know too much about her writing style. Again, this has been a very popular book at my store, and my store does sell a lot of historical fiction. 2018 is another Kristen Hanna, which is The Great Alone. I have a good track record with this author so far, so I'm excited to try another one from her. 2019 was Daisy Jones and the Six. I have not read this book. I am one of those people where Evelyn Hugo was not the best book in the world to me, so it's going to be interesting to see how Taylor Jenkins Reid's books go for me. So the 2020 winner was The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I'm actually really excited to read this one. I've been meaning to read it forever, and I just haven't. So I love that this is going to be a great excuse for me to finally get to that one. Next, last year's winner was Malibu Rising, again by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'm going to make sure I read Daisy Jones before I read Malibu Rising, just because I've heard that's the best way to do that. And then we have Carrie Soto is Back, which is her newest release. Mixed reviews have been coming in on that one. So I don't know how I'm going to feel, because one, I'm not a huge Taylor Jenkins Reid fan of her writing style, so this is going to be an interesting one for me. So when it comes to my list of ranking those 10 stories and how I think they're going to land in my list, this is how that's going to look currently. So this is my predictions at this point. Once I actually read them, things might shift around, but that's where I'm standing at the moment. So let's go ahead and dive into this project, and I'll let you guys know how I'm feeling and give you little reviews for each book as we go along. Hi. So it's time for an update on this vlog. I haven't filmed a clip in a hot minute, but I have finished a book for this project. I planned on vlogging a little more detailed. I'll get better as the vlog goes on. I read Carrie Soto is Back, which was this year's winner of the historical fiction category on the Goodreads Awards. Now, this is essentially about Carrie, who has been a tennis star, and a lot of this really is a father-daughter story, and about how she wants to live up to the expectations of her father and make her proud of him, and about how he just wants her to be happy, and he thinks encouraging her will do that. This book was just fine. It was honestly pretty predictable. I could pretty much see everything coming. So I'm giving this one a 3-star. It's not bad. But again, Taylor Jenkins Reid is not my favorite writing. So I knew that going in. But I also knew that this one was not as good as her others to people. And, you know, I was the oddball out who didn't enjoy her best noted work. So, yeah. This book is just fine. It didn't necessarily do anything wrong. Do I think there were better things nominated? Yes, I do. I just think Taylor Jenkins Reid is a big name and pulled in a lot of people because of her name for Seven Husbands and Daisy Jones and things like this. Daisy Jones will be the next one I talk about, actually. So yeah, when it comes to Carrie Soto is back, I didn't love it. But again, that's kind of been the general consensus. So at least on this one, I'm pretty much with everybody else where it's just fine. As far as historical fiction goes, I do think there are better options. And this one didn't feel like that historical to me, I guess. I don't feel like there were enough historical elements for it to feel like a good historical fiction to me. So again, gonna give it 3 stars. And yeah. Let's move on to Daisy Jones. Hi friends. So I've been really bad about updating this vlog still, but I'm here to talk to you about a couple of the installments in the Goodreads Choice Award winners for historical fiction. We've talked about 1 so far. I'm here to talk about 3 more. Well, technically we've talked about 3 because there's 2 that I'm not rereading. And so I have the next 3 to talk to you about. So after finishing with Carrie Soto is Back, I went ahead and dove into one of the Taylor Jenkins Reid's favorites, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six. Now, being the age that I am, nearing 40, this just felt like a homage to Behind the Music, which is a show that VH1 used to have, where you basically got the whole life story of a band. And that's exactly what this book felt like. So I can understand the appeal of it. For me personally, I didn't really love any of the characters. I didn't really get attached to any of the characters within the band. I got attached to people who were attached to members of the band. But when it came to the actual band members, I didn't end up really caring for many of them, which lead into my feelings about Malibu Rising as well. So a lot of this just felt like spoiled rich people problems and just the music industry taking over people's lives. And that's kind of what I expected going into this. For a second, I thought my mic was off. So I just wanted to double check. But it's not a bad book per se. It just wasn't a great book for me. But like I say, for the nominees for that year, it made sense. I can see the appeal. It did feel a little bit different, a little bit fresh for a historical fiction kind of book. So I can give it credit for that, and I can understand why this one would have won that particular year. Now let's quickly talk about Malibu Rising, which won a year or 2 ago, and I don't understand why this one won at all. This book was awful. I didn't like anything about this book. Again, I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't like the plot. It felt very predictable. And again, it's just rich people problems. And I'm like, that's not what I go to historical fiction for necessarily. I mean, there's some great historical fiction out there that does center around rich people problems, aka things like The Great Gatsby, but this doesn't have that same charm, that same appeal at all. I know that Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing is not necessarily my favorite, so I may be slightly biased on this, but considering the other historical fiction that I read, and I did read that one in between Daisy Jones and Malibu Rising, that may be coloring my experience as well. But when it comes to Malibu Rising, something else should have won, because this doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. It's not that great of a book. I can understand why people would have liked it, but considering what else was nominated, no, it shouldn't have won. It shouldn't have won at all. There were much better picks for that year, so I'm going to leave that one at that. Anyways, let's talk about The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. Now, I completely understand why this one won. This book is a 5-star book, and I am surprised that it was a 5-star book for me. This book has very heavy trigger warnings for abuse, domestic abuse especially. Essentially, we follow Lenny, She starts out at the age of 13. We see her from the ages of 13 to 25. And we see the toxic marriage that her parents have. So she is basically drug up to a very small, very rural town in Alaska by her father, who is having PTSD from the Vietnam War and is not doing well in society. So he is gifted this cabin by someone he served in the war with. So he goes up there, bonds with his friend's family, those kinds of things. But her dad is not necessarily better for being in all the dark that Alaska brings, and that causes a lot of turmoil in their household. So Lenny and her mom Cora basically form this alliance to try to keep each other alive. But as Lenny starts to get older, and there's a particular boy her age in this small town, and they bond very deeply, things start to get complicated. That's all I'm going to say plot-wise in this particular one, other than I am grateful for how things with the dad are handled in the end. I will say that. That was very rewarding for me, so that's all I'll tell you. And about how the consequences of a bunch of actions, you see the consequences of the actions of these people in this small community, and about how people who are not getting the help that they need for their mental health can really derail a community that small. And it was very interesting. All the descriptions of the Alaskan wilderness were very intriguing. I was very captivated by this book. This is a 5-star book. And so far, this has been the only 5-star book of this project for me, because not even the 2 I read before were 5 stars. They were both 4. So this is the biggest win for me, and I completely understand why this one won the Goodreads Choice Award that year. So anyways, with that said, let's move on to the next installment. Hey vlog, so we are on my way to work, and I wanted to quickly update you on Before We Were Yours. So in Before We Were Yours, I'm about a little over halfway through, I want to say. So we're following 2 specific timelines, and this seems to be like mid-2000s and then like the 1940s is kind of what it seems. Maybe not quite, but pretty close. They say present day in the new one, but I know this one came out a while back. But some of the terminology feels even like 10 years before it. So anyhow, when it comes to this book, it's been really interesting so far because we're following, I want to say it's Riley or Willie. I'm listening to the audiobook, so I don't know for sure. I'll type it here. And a woman named Avery. Avery sees this woman at a care facility when she's there with her father for political reasons because he's a senator and he doesn't like to show weakness, but he's starting to he has cancer, and so she's there to kind of be his support system and, be groomed to take over his position, essentially. So what's going on is when she's there, this woman sees her and comes up and grabs her wrist and starts talking to her like she knows her, and she's so confused. And through those circumstances, she ended up getting her bracelet from her grandmother Judy, who's also in a care facility because she's losing her memory, so kind of Alzheimer's-like. And she's in a facility as well, just a different one than this woman, whose name is May. Her name's May Crandall, and she seems overly familiar and recognizes her face and says, "You look like someone I know." And she sees this picture, Avery does, and it looks like her, and it even looks like her grandmother. So she snaps a picture of it, and she shows it to her grandmother. And we seem to be getting the memories of this woman named May in the past, in the late 30s, early 40s. And she was a teenager, and she had 5 siblings. Or 4 siblings. There were 5 kids total. One sister was kind of the quote-unquote outcast sister. She had dark hair, all these kinds of things. Anyway, what it comes down to is these kids were essentially kidnapped from the boat they were living on with their parents when her mom was having complications with a birth of twins. They don't know exactly what happened, but all of a sudden cops showed up at their boat. Supposed cops. I don't believe they were actually cops. And these kids are basically taken to a home to be adopted out, as they've been deemed wards of the state. And so it's just this dark and sad story about this woman who, you know, thinks very fondly of her family, misses her parents, and May had, what she had was a picture of her parents. And when Avery shows her grandma Judy that picture, she recognizes who it is, and she's like freaking out about it. And it's like, you can't tell anybody about the Astoria, which was the name of their boat as kids. So clearly Grandma Judy's hiding more than she wants to believe. There's bigger secrets, and so Avery goes on the hunt to solve what's going on. It's really fun. I really enjoyed it. It was just a really good time. So I've got about 3-ish hours left of the audiobook. I will update you guys again once I'm finished, but I can definitely see why this one would win the Goodreads Choice Award. It tugs on your heartstrings. It's dark. It's emotional. It's everything that good historical fiction is. And this one doesn't feel too pretentious. I mean, clearly Grandma Judy's hiding things behind her money and her wealth and the family name that she inherited when she married. But, so there's like that little air of mystery as well. Like, it's hitting all the good beats of a good historical romance. So I could see why this one would win the year it was nominated. So I'll have to look at the other winners to see if I know of anything better that year. But this is feeling really, really good. And I know that as a bookseller, we sell a ton of copies of Lisa Wingate books at our store, specifically before we were yours too. So it's really good, and I'm very, very excited to finish this up and see how I feel by the end. I'll see you on the other side. All right. So time to tell you guys about Before We Were Yours. Now, the way this one wrapped up, I ended up really, really enjoying. This was a very emotional read. I'm giving it 4.5 stars. There were a couple of things that were a little too convenient right at the very end for me, but it was a beautiful book, very well written, very well done, and I'm very, very happy that this one won that year. I thought it was really well done. I can definitely see how this one was the winner, and yeah, like, it's a really solid historical fiction. So if you're looking for a good historical fiction with a dual timeline, this one's going to be a really good fit for you. But I definitely enjoyed it and would definitely recommend reading it if you're interested in the premise at all. I did find out more about the woman who did the kidnapping, as you can say. She actually is based on a real person who actually did these things, and it's horrible and awful what she did. And this fictionalized story tells what happened to the people that she was, the victims of what she was doing. So with that said, I would definitely recommend picking this one up. And again, I can definitely see this one being a winner. Right now, this is like second place in my ranking of these. I'm going on a little trip, so I'm going to take a little bit of a break from the project. But I will be back. I think I'm going to do the Kate Atkinson next. So I think it's called Life After Life, if I remember right. So I think I'm going to do that one next. And then I think I only have 2 more. Like, we're almost done with this project. And then I can talk to y'all about it, because this has been going. I started these in December, so it's been a bit. So I cannot wait to share these with you. But yes, we'll talk soon. Hello. So time for an update on this Goodreads vlog. I am currently in the middle of Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. Now, I'm doing this via audio, and I'm finding it a bit confusing. I think if I was physically reading it, it wouldn't be quite so confusing. So take that caveat with you. But essentially, we're following a person named Ursula, who seems to be in a cycle repeating her life over and over and over again, and things continue to change in each iteration, but she holds on to her memory. So it's almost like a reincarnation trope. It's like reincarnation meets Groundhog Day, So the concept is good. I'm enjoying it for the most part, but it jumps around a bit more than is easy to follow via audio. And I am doing this at like a reasonable pace. I'm doing it at 2.0 to try to follow along better rather than further up like I normally would. And the character of Ursula is really interesting. I quite like the character, but it's, like I said, it's a little confusing. It might even be a little confusing physically. I know it sometimes will give you like a date or a time, but I feel like the actual reincarnation, like those are what are hard to follow. The storytelling is good for the most part. I'm just a little lost. And I do think if I was reading it physically, I wouldn't be quite as lost. So there's that for you. But I wanted to update you. I'm enjoying it so far. We'll see how I do with the rest of it. Okay, so I'm here to update this vlog again because I have finished Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. Now this book is rough. Like, Ursula dies a whole lot and is reincarnated a whole lot. This is literally like reincarnation Groundhog Day style, but it's very tragic because we're spanning from 1910 through the World Wars. I'm not going to spoil the ending because the ending is very open-ended and open to interpretation, but I understand why Atkinson chose to end it there. There's a specific thing that Ursula keeps trying to prevent happening once she reaches the Second World War, and the one time she doesn't mess with anything is the one time that the thing she's trying to prevent doesn't happen. So it's just kind of this idea of, even if you may remember things from a past life, it doesn't mean you should be playing God and trying to fix things. So yeah, I didn't really fall in love with this book ever, if I'm honest. I mean, it was intriguing and I like reincarnation tropes, so it wasn't all bad for me, but this book had so many like down points that it just made it hard for me to love. This is part of why I don't read a ton of historical fiction in a row, because they do usually have those darker, heavier topics. I do think this one ends relatively happy compared to things that happen throughout. I mean, we deal with the Spanish flu epidemic, we deal with World War I, World War II, Depression. Like, we deal with all of these really heavy parts of our history throughout it. And so because of that, some of the ways that Ursula dies are very rough and hard, and so yeah. I'm gonna settle on like a 3-star, I think, on this one. The writing was good, the concept of the story was great, but I just felt like it was a little too depressing for my personal taste. But I can understand why this one won the year it was nominated. It is a really solid historical fiction. It is just not my personal taste. But again, I can totally see why on this one. I had purposely left this one towards the end because it had so many tropes that I liked that I thought it would at least be in my top 5, but I don't think it is anymore. But it's not bad. Like I say, I can definitely see why people love this one. It is just not for me, which sucks. I'm a little sad about that. I was really hopeful. But what can you do? Hi, vlog. It's been a while, so let's do a quick update. So I am currently reading All the Light We Can't See by Anthony Doerr. This is my penultimate choice for this reading project, and I can definitely see why this one won that year. The writing is top-notch. It is a very sad and depressing book, as some historical fiction just is, but I could definitely see the power already and what's going on in the story, because we have a boy who's basically forced into servitude to the Nazis and we have a French girl who goes blind, and somehow their paths are going to cross. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens when they do. I'm not quite that far in the book yet, but I have been enjoying it thus far. The description and the writing is beautiful and lovely. And like I say, I can definitely see why this one won. The other one I have is The Vanishing Half, which I'll be starting physically here soon. I just have kind of a crazy couple of days, so I'm going to start it after that. And I'll get it done in time, of course. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on with the project here. I just realized I hadn't done an update in a bit. And yes, I'm enjoying, it's weird to say I'm enjoying All the Light We Cannot See, because it is such a sad book. But relatively speaking to some of the books that have been in this, I am enjoying it. As of right now, it's sitting at maybe a 4. I mean, it could go up or down from there. But my gut says 4 right now. But we'll see. Hello. So I actually finished All the Light We Cannot See yesterday. But I was such a mess that y'all did not need to see that. So All the Light We Cannot See is beautiful. I cannot believe I've waited so long to read this book. This is truly a masterpiece. I definitely want to read more Anthony Doerr now. There's one called About Grace that I'm super interested in that after Read What You Own is done, I'm probably going to dive into. But yeah, I don't want to say anything because this is a book that people truly need to experience. What I've told you in the previous clip, I think is about all I would want to tell you, because from that point, it kind of takes on its own grit, its own entity, its own story. And the way that these two end up interacting is amazing. It is such a well-crafted book. Period, end of story. Like, so good. Again, I can understand why this one won that year. It's a brilliant book. It deserved to win. I've got one book left for this project. I haven't started it yet, but I'm starting it tomorrow. And that is The Vanishing Half. So this is another 5-star. So I feel like the earlier choices have been stronger in this category. And I feel like as time has gone on, it's just become a popularity contest for this category. So with that said, I'll save my full thoughts for the end, but that's where I'm at right now. And yes. Read All the Light We Cannot See if you haven't, because it is truly a brilliant book. I am so glad that I left this one for the end, so that I ended this project on a high note. This is definitely one of the best historical fictions that I read for this project. It had every right to win. This is a beautiful story about two twins who grow up in a very backwards town called Mallard, who they both are on the lighter side for a black person, and one twin decides to abandon her black roots and live a white life. She has a white husband, she has a daughter, and they know nothing of her past and her upbringing, and her twin sister, who chose to live her life as a black woman and embraced her black side. And this is a generational story that takes place from roughly the 50s through the 90s. These two twins, their daughters end up meeting, and it's all about the generational stories and almost trauma passed on through the way that they choose to live their lives, and how that affects their families, their kids, the way they live. It's brilliant. Brilliant, period, end of story. Definitely need to read more Britt Bennett. And yes, so I'm so glad that I'm ending this experiment on a high note, and that this was the last one that I chose. My last two have been solid wins. So I have some final thoughts on this entire project, so I will share those with you in my wrap-up clip with my final ranking for where all these books land. But though I don't have much to say, I feel like this book is better to go in not knowing much. honestly, and you just go in and you enjoy the ride that is this book. Because I feel like if you go in with too many expectations, you would expect too much from this book, in my opinion. But I am so glad I just went in and trusted my friends that loved it, and it really was well done. I know not everybody has loved this either, and that's just how historical fiction is. You love it or you don't. And I think a lot of it depends on what you've read. Of all the historical fiction that I've read for this project, this is definitely one of the strongest, and one that I can definitely see why it won. Because this makes complete sense to me, because I'm so glad this book got the recognition it did, because it's definitely well deserved. So with that said, I'm going to send you over to editing or final clip Shay, and she will tell you the results of this. Hello, it's time to wrap up this final clip for this secret project. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly show you my starting lineup of the ranking that I thought I would end up in, which some of this is pretty accurate and other parts of it are not, because here is the one at the end of the reading project. Now, 2 out of the 3 in the top 3 remained there, which was great, but things like Before We Were Yours was higher, Life After Life was lower. So there were some things that, even though there were tropes I like or things that I wasn't sure about, we definitely had an interesting spread. So I would say about half of them, I think, deserved to win. And then the other half, not so much, in my personal opinion. So let's kind of go through, let's start at the bottom and we'll work our way up. So at the bottom is Malibu Rising. So let me run, was that last year or the year before? So yeah, in historical fiction for the 2021 results, like honestly, any of the other options here would have been better than Malibu Rising for me. Like, honestly, I apparently really dig Kristen Hanna's writing, so The Four Winds could have won. The Paris Library by Janet Skelsine Charles could have won. The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles could have won. The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams could have won. The Prophets by Robert St. Jones. Yellow Wife by Cicada Johnson. Of Women in Salt by Gabriela Garcia. The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois could have won by Eternal by Lisa Scottoline could have won. Any of those would have been amazing. So I honestly think this was just a case of popularity. The next one is Carrie Soto, and I don't think Carrie Soto deserved to win. I'm really not happy that Carrie Soto won, honestly. I mean, Violetta by Isabel Allende was one of my favorite reads of last year, and it's in translation, so that's always fantastic. Take My Hand by Dolan Perkins Valdez is also fantastic. Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart is good. Heck, Hester by Lori Lisa Albanese, I want to say is the last name. That's like a retelling of The Scarlet Letter. That would have been really cool to win. Peach Blossom Spring by Melissa Fu was also fantastic. And some of the other options, like, I definitely want to read and are on my list. Like Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. I've been meaning to read that one for quite a while now. So there were many options that could have won, but Carrie Soto won. So this project has definitely proved that I am not a Taylor Jenkins Reid girly, that's for sure. And I think it was 2018 where Daisy Jones won. No, 2019. So, like, I can understand why people chose that, but there were better options that year. I mean, The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead is better. The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates is better. Heck, The Island of Sea Women by Lisa C. is better. Silka's Journey by Heather Morris. The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek. Like, there were so many. Like, Nottingham sounds super cool. Like, there were so many better options than Daisy Jones. But just because Daisy Jones was in vogue at the moment, all of these other amazing historical fictions got pushed to the side. So I'm a little grumpy. Let's look at Life After Life. I believe that one was 2013. Yes, that one was 2013. Sorry, I'm like pulling this up on the computer as I go just to make sure. Now, with the other options, honestly, I would have preferred Burial Rites by Hannah Kent over Life After Life because I preferred the book better. Burial Rites is a 5-star, where Kate Atkinson's Life After Life is a 3-star for me. So for me personally, that one just worked better. But like I say, I can understand why people would love it because it is kind of a unique concept. I've just seen the concept done better. And the rest of these other ones are pretty standard historical fiction writers. So any of them could have won and it would have been fine that year, in my opinion. I just personally would have chosen Burial Rites by Hannah Kent because I do think that's a stronger, more interesting book for me personally. Now, everything above that, honestly, totally deserved to win those years. I mean, The Underground Railroad had every right to win. The Nightingale had every right to win. Before We Were Yours had every right to win. Same with The Vanishing Half, All the Light We Cannot See, and The Great Alone. So, like I say, for like 6 out of the 10, I do think they deserved to win, whether they agreed with me or not. But honestly, like, I do not understand the appeal of Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't. And I know that's a very unpopular opinion, and so I'm sorry, y'all. I didn't even get along with Seven Husbands. So her writing is just not for me. Yes, there are other titles of hers that I'm interested in, but I know that I don't jive with her writing. So I'm just not going to pick them up, even though they do sound great in concept and in theory. Her writing is just not for me. And this just tells me that I want to read more historical fiction. It's a genre I do actually enjoy when I pick it up, for the most part. I just need to pick up more of it. But you guys have seen a whole video about that. If you're visiting my channel because you saw me from somebody else's collab on this, thank you. I would love it if you would subscribe, click the bell, consider becoming a member, all those kinds of things if you're interested in what I'm doing here. But for my people who have been here for a long time, you're going to see a lot more historical fiction. So you're going to see a lot of different kinds of books coming across my channel, not just mainly romance and manga. Though those will still be very present in my reading. But yeah, so all in all, I think Goodreads has become a popularity contest. And I do think that people need to be wiser as they're voting on which ones they think deserve to win. Because historical fiction over the last 5 years, really, I would say only 2 of the 5 were deserved. But then again, I am not a Taylor Jenkins Reid girly. So I do think, if she was more in just the straight up fiction category, I wouldn't be so perturbed. But I don't feel like her books are that historical. Now, color me the unpopular opinion here, but when I'm reading something classified as a historical fiction, I want it to be from more than 30 years ago. Then again, I'm old, so I'm in my late 30s, so I don't feel like it's that long ago. So something from the 70s doesn't feel like historical fiction to me typically. The exception to that would be The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. But that had a lot more going for it than the historical elements. There were a lot of storytelling pieces that were very dated and felt 20 years before the time that we were actually experiencing them. So overall, this project was very interesting. I'm very excited to see everybody else's videos and their final thoughts on these. Like, I think it's going to be fantastic. The playlist with everybody's videos will be linked down below. We're all supposed to be uploading them at the same time. I certainly hope you will subscribe to everybody in this collab because I enjoy all of them and all of their content. They are all fantastic humans and I cannot wait for opportunities where I get to work with them more. So anyways, those are my final thoughts. Once again, this is my final tally and how I feel like my experience went in reading and which ones that I would recommend to people first. And yeah, so thanks a lot. Check out everybody else's video. If you're here just because you love me and you sat through this whole dang thing, put a gold star down there because you definitely earned it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
It's been raining for days now, been running like a child. Can't feel the cold, well I'm lost here with you, lost in the woods. Lost as I should.